Menopausal symptoms are caused by hormonal changes. The gold standard for treating that is hormone replacement therapy, but not everybody is either suitable or wants to take hormone replacement therapy, and that's absolutely fine. There are other treatments and there are other lifestyle interventions that can support menopausal symptoms. This isn't a disease. This is a normal phase of a woman's life. It means that there is a need for some adjustment, treat those symptoms, adjust your lifestyle. And this really is the secret to those women who come out and say menopause was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Welcome to the 51%, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get back to basics when it comes to women's health. Through expert insights and powerful personal stories, we help you tune in to what really matters. Your body, your well-being, your life. No one-size-fits-all advice, just real conversations to help you understand your health on your own terms. But before we dive in, I have a quick favour to ask. Please hit subscribe and join the 51% community on our website. It's free and it helps us grow, reach more women and create events that really speak to the health and wealth challenges we all face. And finally, just so you know, everything shared on this podcast is for information only. It's not medical or financial advice, and always speak to a qualified expert for support. Nigel, welcome to the podcast. It is great to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. Can you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do and why you do it? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Shaya. Thanks for having me. So yes, I'm Nigel Denby. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been working in the menopause space for at least 25 years. About 5-6 years ago in lockdown, I wasn't able to see my patients anymore, not face to face. And at that stage, nobody saw anybody virtually. So I needed to keep in touch with patients. I was seeing them in Ireland and in Leeds and in London. So I set up a little Facebook group, and fast forward now, this is an online community called Your Menopause by Harley St at home. We support about 90,000 women with menopause education, empowerment and information. We don't prescribe, we don't give one-to-one advice. This is all about helping women understand what's going on in their body at menopause. We're about to move into menstrual health as well. And in the last couple of years, we began to support health professionals as well. And currently we have about 10,000 doctors, nurses, pharmacists, all sorts of different health professionals who join us to learn more about menopause so that we can support more women.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So just to start with, I just want to kind of clarify, what's the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist? And there's also various types of nutritionists that I see on social media. And I think it's really important that women, well, anyone really, understands that before they figure out whether they need to see one or not.
Yeah, sure. So dietitian is a protected title. We have to have a minimum of a degree in dietetics, nutrition and dietetics. We have to be registered with the British Dietetic Association, with the Health Professions Council, so that patients, the public, have a minimum standard that they know they're going to achieve. And you can always go on to the Health Professions Council website where you can check that your dietitian is registered. Unfortunately, nutritionist is not protected in the same way. So anyone can set themselves up as a nutritionist or a nutritional therapist or a nutrition coach. These are just words. They don't actually mean anything in terms of minimum qualifications. Don't get me wrong, there are some brilliant nutritionists out there, but there are also some complete charlatans.
How would you kind of go about understanding whether the person that you're seeing is qualified, really?
Well, if you're seeing someone who is claiming to be a dietitian, you can check the Health Professions Council's register. If you're seeing a nutritionist, which is perfectly reasonable and legitimate, I would absolutely want to see what their qualifications are and know that they've at least have a degree in in nutrition.
Yeah. So in what instance would you see either or?
There really isn't a reason to choose, I think, either profession. Ultimately, it's all about the rapport, the relationship you've got with the particular practitioner. Part of the reason I've been involved in menopause for such a long time is, as a dietitian, I have to follow the evidence.
Yeah.
I can't tell people to do weird and wacky things that might sound really sexy, but actually aren't going to do them any good. Yeah. And so that means a lot of the information I would share with someone is stuff we all know about: eating fruit and veg, more fiber, less fat, less sugar. It's not really sexy. And one of the reasons I really love working in menopause is by the time women get to that phase in their life, they're kind of a bit fed up with the nonsense, with the quick fixes, the gimmicks and the fads. They're ready to start thinking about long-term health. And that's where the information that I can give is really relevant and received well. But it's also, it is all about behavior change. None of the women that I tend to see are doing anything particularly awful. They've picked up habits in their 20s, 30s and 40s, which are just really part of life. And now they are not getting them away with them so much. So that's why someone would work with me. I think if they wanted to know what I'm not going to get is pseudoscience, I'm not going to get nutritional nonsense. What I'm going to get is practical information that's going to be molded around my lifestyle and is really going to help. Menopause is a really tricky time. And I think a lot of people often wonder, well, why is a bloke involved, had been working in menopause for such a long time? On a personal level, it really stemmed from my mum. When I was a little boy, my mum was sectioned into a psychiatric unit. Right. She'd struggled with her mental health for a lot of her life, and none of us realised, I certainly didn't, and unfortunately neither did her doctor, register that this was the beginning of her perimenopause and was causing a spiral. Yeah. It was really frightening watching my mum being taken off literally in a straitjacket. Fast forward again. And about 10 years ago, in her 80s, I watched my mum absolutely struggling with recurrent UTIs, urinary tract infections. She was a poorly controlled type 2 diabetic. Mums never listen to their sons when it comes to healthy eating. And she was managing to control those UTIs really well using topical estrogen, vaginal estrogen. And a young gung-ho GP came in and thought, what on earth is an 80-odd-year-old woman doing using estrogen? Stopped the estrogen. The UTIs came back with a vengeance. Within less than a month, she was sectioned again because the UTIs were really having such a poor effect on her mental health. And within a couple of months, she was sent back home to us on an end-of-life plan and died within a few weeks of that. And what you then see is over 40 years of one woman being let down by a lack of knowledge about menopause. That's why I do what I do. That has to stop. And there are thousands of stories that are just as harrowing, just as upsetting, that are still happening today.
That is terrible. I mean, I do hear of women going through a lot. Every woman's journey is different. And this is a problem I see now. Because every woman's journey is different, that's not the problem. The problem is they're giving a one-size-fits-all solution to their menopause symptoms, which then often can build more anxiety, build more frustration, things not working as well. So how do you combat that? Because I feel like a lot of women are struggling to find the right path for them. And it's difficult to get them to stop looking at what everyone else is doing. Just focus on you and what's happening to you and your situation and environment.
Well, we've been doing some work at Your Menopause recently where we've been studying conversations with over 3,000 women, looking at their lived experience of menopause care today. And what we've seen is in the last few years, the increase in knowledge has been immeasurable. We now talk about this in a really different way than we did 5 or 6 years ago. And that's fantastic. So knowledge is improving. Where we still have a gap is in confidence in using the knowledge that we've got. So, for instance, if a woman is in her mid-40s, perhaps she's beginning to develop some symptoms. As you mentioned, the symptoms of menopause are really different from one woman to another.
Yeah.
They can literally start from the top of her head to the tips of her toes. There are estrogen receptors all over the body. And so that can mean it can affect brain, cognition, memory, mood. It can affect your eyes, your hearing. You can develop breast tenderness. You can gain weight. You can get aches and pains, itchy, you name it.
Yeah.
But you can also experience a lot of those symptoms for other reasons. So very often women don't have the confidence in what is happening to them to be able to look at that and think, that wasn't happening 6 months ago. And then, as well as not sleeping very well, I've also got tinnitus. My eyes feel dry. And then to be able to track that and then be able to have the confidence to go into a GP and say, look, Dr. Shreya, I am 49. I'm still having periods, but I've developed all of these symptoms.
Yeah.
I didn't have these 6 months ago. I think this could be perimenopause. Can we have a conversation about that? Most doctors should know that the fact that that lady is having regular periods has got nothing to do with whether or not she's perimenopausal or not. That collection of symptoms that are new would be an indicator of perimenopause. Some of them might also warrant a little bit more investigation to see, is this perimenopause or not? Probably not a blood test, but other types of investigations. And that's what I talk about with confidence. That information is getting through. That confidence is the bit that's missing first. Then once you do establish, is this perimenopause or not? Then we've also got a confidence lack in treatment choices, a lack of still clear information, but really feeling confident that the treatment that you're going to pursue is the right one for you. There's so much noise on Instagram. That's where most women are getting their information from. And unfortunately, an awful lot of the time, it's absolute garbage that they're listening to, or it's personal opinion. And personal opinion is not public health.
No, absolutely not. And this is a problem. There's so much noise. There's so much misinformation. There's disinformation. And then knowing what's misinformation and what's disinformation, that's another thing, right? So do you think women's perimenopausal symptoms over the years have got worse due to perhaps, more stressful situations? If you've got caring responsibilities, whether that's children and or parents, working non-stop, all these extra things, social media, the anxiety of social media, do you think they're kind of contributing to make symptoms worse for women?
I don't know that we've got evidence to suggest that the hot flushes that a woman's having now are more severe than the ones that might have happened to her grandmother.
Yeah.
But what we do have, and you're sort of alluding to it, is 21st century life is really different.
Yeah.
And also the expectations of women in their mid to late 40s are really different. The days of a woman beginning her perimenopause and being able to go in a dark room and come out when it's all over have gone. At that point now, most women are at the peak of their career if they're working. They've probably had their kids if they've got them later. So those kids haven't gone yet. They're probably in the middle of their GCSEs or even younger. Older parents are beginning to need a little bit more support. There's also, as you say, the pressure of keeping up with the Joneses. We've got to pay for this car. We've got to make the mortgage payments. And very often, as we know, like 1 in 2 marriages have broken down. So that might all be going on as a sole parent. Life is really pressured. Women are spinning more plates than they ever had to spin before, despite the fact that we live in a world where women are supposed to be able to have it all. The one thing we forgot to do was say, but men might need to pick up the slack a little bit and start getting more involved in the day-to-day running of life. So women have it all, but still have to do it all. And perimenopause didn't change. Women's lives changed. And that's where I think it becomes now the straw that breaks the camel's back. But we've got to remember, at the same time as life getting busier, women are going to live longer than they ever have lived before. Women are likely to live longer in a menopausal state than they did in their fertile years or their premenopausal state. So you're going to live into your 80s, 90s and beyond. That's wonderful. And that's because we live in a society where we don't starve very, very often. We don't have infectious diseases despite COVID and everything else.
Yeah.
We have great healthcare, great education. But what that also means is we have forgotten really about the quality of those years ahead. We can keep people alive, but the quality is down to us as individuals.
Yeah.
This is where menopause can be a gift, because it is the moment for a woman to stop and think, what type of 85-year-old do I want to be? Do I want to be that woman that everyone looks at and thinks, God, I want to be like her when I'm that age, digging my own garden, decorating my own living room? Or am I going to be content to sit in the corner of a nursing home, hoping someone might come along and help me go for a wee? Because it is this moment which really, and the choices you make about how you're going to live your life at this moment, which are largely going to determine the outcome of that question.
Absolutely.
Men don't get that moment. Menopause, I'm making light. Menopause is not always a pleasant thing to go for.
Yeah.
But if you can see it in that way, that it is a moment to pause, reflect, make a few adjustments, actually it can be a gift that is going to give you a much better outcome in those decades ahead.
That is a key thing. I think there are a lot of women looking at their time of life, like mid-40s now, and thinking, hold on a minute, what am I doing right now? Where's my life going? And do I even want this? But the problem is you've still got those pressures and those things going on in your life. And if we could just kind of be like, right, we're going to stop all of this and focus on ourselves, and that's all we're going to focus on, that would be great. But it's kind of managing those bits, and you can't do everything at the same time. So in terms of using food and other things like focusing on your sleep, how can you do that to improve your lifestyle and the way you're going through your perimenopausal symptoms and menopause in general?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of assuming that cleaning up your lifestyle is going to mean things like that, you have to wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. at the bottom of a mountain covered in the morning dew to gather mushrooms. You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to leave your partner, leave your job, dump your kids on the you can make some really simple things. And this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning.
Yeah.
Basic good advice, evidence-based advice about eating well. It ain't that complicated.
No.
It's fairly straightforward. And this is where you can really take some of those things and begin to introduce them in fairly gentle ways. So we have a big saying in Your Menopause, it is not about being perfect. It's about just trying to be a wee bit better. And the first place to start is thinking, well, what's bothering me the most? 70% of women will gain around about 10 kilos over the period of their perimenopause. It's about 1.5 kilos a year. And if we think perimenopause lasts on average between 6 and 10 years for most women, 10 kilos is what, 1.5 stones in old money.
Yeah.
If you're 5'4", 5'5", that's a dress size. It means, and because it's accumulating around the middle here, nothing fits.
Yeah.
Blouses, skirts, jeans,
Someone
jackets.
my size.
Exactly. This would be really significant. And it would mean your entire body shape changes. So no wonder when we look at the symptoms that bother women the most, it's that makes women furious. The other thing that really worries women is poor memory, brain fog, the sort of up and down of mood swings. Women come into our community saying, I thought I was losing my mind. I thought this was the beginning of dementia. Those things really do bother women. So let's think, where do you start with lifestyle? Well, if it's weight, actually, where you would start is thinking, all right, you don't need some silly diet right now. What you need to do is the reason that you've gained weight is partly due to your hormonal changes,
Yeah.
partly due to a loss in muscle tissue that slows your metabolic rate, partly due to your symptoms. But there's a big thing that's going on here, and that actually is your current lifestyle. So let's look at that. Let's take a really careful food and activity diary. Let's look at it. And most women can tell me what's wrong with their food and activity diary. They're not moving enough. They're looking at their diary and realizing they're going for 8 hours without eating anything, and then wonder why they eat a dinner the size of their husbands or their teenage sons at night.
Yeah.
Then also recognizing, and because I can't sleep, I'm drinking 2 or 3 glasses of Sauvignon Blanc every night to try and get me off to sleep.
Yeah.
That then leads me to graze on crisps and chocolate and cheese before I go to bed. I still don't sleep, so I wake up in the morning feeling exhausted, and off we go on this whole journey again.
Yeah.
So when you start looking, well, what are you going to do about that? There's a lot you can do to help you sleep better. We're going to have to get you starting to eat more regularly. You're probably going to even find that you're ending up eating more than you currently do, but it's going to be spread out over the day. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but what the point I want to get across is that the lifestyle elements, we're always talking about the lifestyle toolkit that goes along with menopause. It is really simple stuff. We've built courses in our community to help women with sleep, with anxiety, with digestive health, with skin, with weight. They are all remarkably simple. And the point for a woman who joins us is to say, focus on what's bothering you the most. What is the thing that is really making you struggle? Deal with that. And then you can come to the other things if you want to, or you can leave it there. This is your menopause. It's your journey. You decide how it's going to go.
Absolutely. And this is what I mean about personalized care. So much out there on social media. Try this miracle supplement, this miracle cream, whatever that might be, hair oil, whatever. I mean, there's so much. What is your opinion on women taking lots and lots of supplements and things? It's a road I've gone down myself, thinking if I take all these supplements, it's going to help me with X, Y, and Z. But there's no evidence really for a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's different if you're having a blood test and you're completely deficient in something and you do need that supplementation to build up that deficiency. But a lot of people, men especially, are taking supplements just kind of willy-nilly now.
Women come into my clinic room sometimes with a bag rattling full of supplements that they've seen on Instagram and TikTok and absolutely thought they need to follow. You're absolutely right. There's very little evidence supporting many food supplements. And we've got to remember, food supplements, unlike medicines, are really poorly regulated. They are less regulated than dog food. So actually, there doesn't need to be any evidence. You can say pretty much whatever you want around a supplement. So first and foremost, there are 2 supplements probably that most women need to think about. One is a vitamin D supplement to support bone health, particularly important at menopause. The other thing that many women will benefit from is a really good quality probiotic. We've done a lot of work to really understand the link between the gut microbiome and estrogen and the effect that can have on menopause symptoms. So those would be 2 things that I think we're beginning to see some really good evidence for. The rest, you're right, unless there is a clinical deficiency, there probably is no real cause to be taking a supplement. But I totally get that women may want to try things. What I would say is if you're going to try a supplement, be really sure what it is you want that supplement to do and then track it. Track it over 3 months and see if it really does make a difference. If it does, well, let's not really worry about whether that's a placebo effect or it really is doing something. If you feel better, brilliant. Carry on. If you don't, stop it. Don't take it anymore. The other thing I would say is also, you mentioned, trying lots of different things. And women I see, when they come in with these bags, we have no idea what the effect is, sometimes what the negative effect might be of taking multiple supplements at different times. So I think really be cautious and don't take supplements to try and replace a lousy diet. It never will. Usually, the much clearer answers are right under your nose, and just eating a bit more fruit and veg, a bit less salt, a bit less sugar, a bit more fiber will do way more than any supplement ever could.
Yeah, exactly. It's a case of, if you're taking supplements, have you thought about the food first approach
Exactly.
beforehand?
Yeah.
And then if that definitely doesn't work, then maybe consider a supplement if you need to. And then also make sure you do your research on that supplement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important for women to understand that eating well is never going to manage your menopause symptoms. I would love it if it did, because then I could literally force every woman to eat 5 fruit and veg a day.
Yeah.
Menopausal symptoms are caused by hormonal changes. Yeah. The gold standard for treating that is hormone replacement therapy, but not everybody is either suitable or wants to take hormone replacement therapy, and that's absolutely fine. There are other treatments and there are other lifestyle interventions that can support menopausal symptoms. But if anybody suggests to you, this smoothie, eating this type of menopause cake is going to sort out your menopause symptoms, forget it. It won't.
And this is a problem now. There are people selling things and promoting things on Instagram or TikTok, smoothie, like you said, or vitamin. It's actually getting quite ridiculous and women are following it. But do you think that women are following it because they're getting quite desperate and it feels like a quick fix rather than trying the alternative option, which probably takes a bit longer?
I think it's a combination of things. So I think absolutely, of course, we're a quick fix society. That's what social media is, isn't it? So yes, we'd far rather pop a supplement than actually deal with the real issue, a dodgy diet and a poor lifestyle. I think also, though, many women have found when they have reached out for medical support, it hasn't always been there. We still have women who we have taught to advocate for themselves by going to their NHS provider or that, they're asking for help only to be told, really sorry, I don't do menopause. That's ridiculous. That has to stop. We know that many GPs, many nurses, had no training in menopause in our basic training. But it is absolutely reasonable now that any prescriber should be able to start most women off on their menopause journey. Yeah. We have menopause specialist doctors, and they are there predominantly to treat much more complex cases where there are other conditions going on and need more careful attention. So it's getting better, but it's not right. So coming back to the question, I do get why women might look to self-treat. Really and truly, there isn't a quick answer. There isn't a magic wand to this. This isn't a disease. This is a normal phase of a woman's life. It means there is a need for some adjustment. And it does actually mean that treat those symptoms, adjust your lifestyle. And this really is the secret to those women who come out and say, menopause was the best thing that ever happened to me. I feel better now having cleaned up my lifestyle, dealt with my symptoms than I did for the last 20 years.
I know that women from different backgrounds they can start their menopause journey quite early. Can you talk a bit about that? What are the symptoms that they might feel that they're getting that start a lot earlier, and then when they do go to the GP, because it is a lot earlier, they may potentially get dismissed as well?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, generally women of colour will experience the beginning of symptoms earlier than Caucasian women.
Is there a reason for that?
We don't really know what the reason is, but that is absolutely an evidenced trend.
Yes.
Again, is there evidence that those symptoms themselves are different, or is it a case that often culturally the way those symptoms are received, acknowledged, talked about is different? I suspect it's a little more of the latter.
Yes.
We don't see enough women of colour talking about their lived experience. We don't see enough women of colour who are doctors talking about menopause and other women's health issues. We are really conscious that we want to have more women of colour in our platform talking about what's going on. I'll give you an example of how things can be slightly different. So a few years ago, we did a pilot project in the middle of Leicester in a practice which was almost exclusively South Asian. This particular practice had a community gynecologist working in the practice who was there to support women with menopause. She was basically sitting knitting a jumper. Nobody was coming forward because South Asian women weren't talking about menopause. We went in and we said, look, I wonder what we can do. We have a really well put together weight management program. We know South Asian women are much more at risk of type 2 diabetes when they gain weight around their middle than Caucasian women. So we said, actually, let's not even talk about menopause. Let's open a weight management course for women who are 40 plus. That's what we did. In the process of this course, we talk about menopause symptoms because often those are the barriers to women taking more exercise and being bothered to cook more and all the rest of it. As soon as we started talking about those other symptoms, the women started saying, yeah, I get that. No, I get that. I don't sleep. I'm doing this. Then we were able to start talking about menopause. And very quickly, that community gynae was mobbed with women going to get advice and support. Again, this is illustrating to me there's more than one way to skin a cat. Now, if we know whole communities talk about menopause in a different way or don't talk about it at all, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep talking about it in the same way that we do to Caucasian women and even talking about it louder or more often, hoping that that's going to land. You have to change the way that you deliver your information.
I really love that, actually. I never thought about that because you often just keep throwing menopause down people's throats, the word menopause and perimenopause. But in fact, if you just start talking about certain symptoms like, oh, I've not been getting enough sleep, or my sleep's really disrupted for the past, I don't know, year or something, rather than I'm perimenopausal, people perhaps might not relate to that so much.
Absolutely. And of course, I mean, that's not the only solution. We need lots of different things. Again, we need to hear more women talking about that experience. I think there is also culturally in some groups a thought that you just put up with that. That's what your mother did. That's what your grandmother did. There are other communities where the idea of period stopping is really not something that's very welcome. You know, well, that takes a bit of getting used to, and you position the conversation differently. So again, the last thing we should do, and the part of the reason when we've been looking at this, you know, when you think about women who don't use English as their first language, it's no good for us just to put our information out with simple translation. Maybe we need to dub content. Maybe we actually need to remake content with women who are from the groups we're trying to reach, actually presenting it. I think, you know, it is as complex as menopause itself to get it right. And very often the only way you're going to get it right is talking to these groups themselves and saying, how do you want to receive this information?
Just being proactive at the end of the day, rather than just sitting there waiting for people to come to you.
Exactly.
And I think that is the key thing with companies that are more proactive and doctors and, you know, community professionals that want to go out into the community and make that difference rather than sitting there waiting.
Go to your audience and really get a sense from them.
So are there any key symptoms you'd think that women of colour get a lot earlier than the Caucasian women, do you think? Or is it kind of they just get them earlier?
We don't tend to see it, see that there is a pattern or a group of symptoms that present earlier. I mean, generally speaking, for most women, some of the earlier symptoms can be, but this is, again, it varies from one woman to another. It can be a change in periods. They might get lighter, but they could also get heavier. You might go for 2 or 3 months without a period. On the other hand, they could be as regular as clockwork. We know vasomotor symptoms, the hot flushes and the night sweats, can be some of the earlier symptoms to present. But again, not always. It really does vary from woman to woman. So what I would hate us to do is suggest, oh, well, if you're not getting those symptoms and you're South Asian, no, it's not going to be perimenopause.
Of course.
I think the thing is, no, that we reckon perimenopause, the average age for it to start in Caucasian women is 46. However, we don't consider symptoms earlier up to the age or down to the age of 40. We don't consider that particularly unusual. Many South Asian women, many Black women will be in that category, and some even slightly younger than that, late 30s perhaps. And it's not unusual for women in general to start to experience the effects of altering hormonal levels in their late 30s. That can be quite common. I think for women in general, it's really important to know this is likely to happen much earlier than you thought. Perimenopause doesn't really happen in your mid-50s. If it does, something's gone wrong. And so many women expect that's when it's going to come and are absolutely horrified that it's happening as early as it is, when in fact that's perfectly normal.
Yeah. I guess it's knowing you're normal and knowing anything that might be happening to you that's different. Understanding that and then going to see your GP. But there's also a risk now. The word menopause is out there now quite a lot, and a lot of celebrities have also, they talked about it a few years ago, and it's out there kind of in the mainstream. But there's also a bit of a danger when you do have certain symptoms, and it can't necessarily just be put down to menopause, because it could be something else that's completely different and not menopause as well, right?
You're right. Absolutely right. Look, celebrities talking about menopause or having a dodgy menopause is about as trendy as a Gucci handbag right now. You've got them all coming out. And again, it's really great that we are talking about it in the way that we are, but we mustn't think that everything is down to menopause. Women can have a whole host of medical issues that affect them in their midlife. So I think, the message has to be, whatever's going on, don't ignore it, and don't assume everything is going to be linked to your hormones. Very often it will be, but there are occasions when it's not, and that really does need to be checked.
You talked about a lot of women coming to see you with concerns about the whole weight gain. Can you talk a bit about the GLP-1? Because I think that a lot of women think that is what they need to take. And how does that work with menopause? And is it something that they can take with menopause?
So GLP-1 medications, Mounjaro, Wegovy, all of the ones that are out are potentially a game changer for the way that we can manage weight. At the moment, they are licensed and recommended for women or for anyone with a BMI over 30. That's pretty overweight. The vast majority, and that's the only way someone would be able to access them on the NHS, there is a huge proportion, millions of people who are accessing them privately. And very often they are having to fudge what they're describing as their current weight and height in order to access that medication. Personally, I absolutely think the group with a BMI between 25 and 30, overweight, not obese group, absolutely should have access to them, because these can be a really amazing tool to help prevent further weight gain. However, that isn't the case at the moment. So the majority of menopausal women I see that have gained weight around the middle here are probably in that group with a BMI of 25 to 30. So they're accessing it privately. They don't have to tell anybody that they're using it. Two things to remember here with a GLP-1. One, you can't just let the drug do all the work. The drug will make you feel fuller. It will make you not need to eat so much. It will shut that noise, that food noise, that only people who struggle with their weight, myself included, know what that means. That thing of knowing there is a Twix in the cupboard and thinking about it for 4 hours and how you're actually going to justify that you can eat it. It can take all of that away. That's amazing. And it can often give you the chance to do the things that you would normally expect to do to manage your weight. So less, move more, and get the sort of results that you should be able to get. It kind of levels the playing field out, when previously you might have tried doing that and not really got anywhere. So they can be great. You've got to, though, change your diet and your physical activity levels. But on a safety level, if you take hormone replacement therapy and you have a uterus or a womb, you must be taking progesterone. And if you take progesterone orally in a capsule, I mean, they are big old capsules. If you take your progesterone orally, you really do need to talk to your prescriber if you're taking a GLP-1, even if you're accessing it privately. The reason being that part of what the GLP-1 does is speeds up the transit of food through your gut. And what we know is that can have an impact on your ability to absorb the progesterone in your oral tablet. That's really important, because you only take that progesterone to protect the lining of the uterus, to protect it from staying too thick for too long, and then increasing your risk of endometrial cancer. So it's really important, if you're going to use a GLP-1 and you're going to access it privately, and you take your progesterone orally, that you talk to your doctor. Your doctor won't judge you. This is not cheating. This is a perfectly legitimate thing to choose to do, but you are going to need to adjust how you take that progesterone. You may be able to take it in a different way. You may be able to up the dose whilst you up your doses of GLP-1s, but you do need support to do that.
Is the GLP-1 more for people that have gone down the route of improving their diet and their movement, if that wasn't something that they were doing already, and then that not working, and then going down the route of taking GLP-1? Or is it almost like, I haven't tried that, but I'm just going to take the GLP-1 anyway?
I think there's a huge group of people who particularly are in that BMI of 25 to 30, who pretty much do know what to do and have been trying it. And there are various things, sometimes menopause, which mean doing all the right things still isn't really working. And then this can be a catalyst. The GLP-1 can, just as I say, level the playing field. If you think about menopausal weight gain, it is different from weight gain you would experience at any other stage in your life. The central deposition, as we call it, the belly fat, that's being caused by estrogen. Estrogen previously was giving you your female shape. Even if you were heavy all your life, you would still have a nipped in waist that men don't get. That's estrogen. So estrogen isn't causing you to gain weight, but it is changing where the fat lays down. So you start laying fat down like a man. Then we've got the other issue that the fall in estrogen is speeding up the rate at which you lose a bit of muscle tissue. That's slowing your metabolic rate down. Not by a lot, maybe a couple of 100 calories a day, but that's a potato, slice of bread and butter, a 2-finger Kit Kat. So it's really easy to overconsume. Then if you haven't slept or you've got other menopausal symptoms, you're probably not going to go to your Zumba class, and you might well have an extra glass of wine to get to sleep or not eat as well as you would. So that impacts it as well. We also know changes in estrogen can make your body want to hold on to fat a little bit more. So very often women are doing what you would consider everything by the book, and they're still not making progress. So I completely get it that they might think, right, I'm going to try this, and they start to get results. We should applaud that, but we do need to make sure you are doing those right things, that you are getting some support and advice on that. And again, if you're taking HRT, that you talk to your prescriber.
Maybe this is a bit of a naive or stupid question, I'm not sure, but if you're taking HRT to replace the hormones that you're having issues with, should that not be helping you reduce the weight anyway?
Well, wouldn't it be brilliant? And that's not a stupid question at all. It really does make sense. There's two things to think of. First of all, the estrogen in your HRT is just enough to take the edge off symptoms. It's nowhere near bringing you back to the levels that you were before perimenopause. So it's not enough to change where your body's going to lay down fat. But yeah, there is a slight, you are bringing the balance back a little.
Yeah.
The other thing where it really can help, though, is if you've gained weight and also you've got no energy, you can't sleep, your mood swing is really, and your brain fog is really getting you down, and your comfort eating. If you start HRT and begin to feel a bit better, you are much more inclined to do all those other things that are going to really help you. So very often women will start our Back to Basics program, which is our weight loss program. And we'll say to them, look, get these symptoms under control first. You've got to be on your A game to change your behaviors. You are not going to do that if you haven't slept for 6 weeks.
I'm a huge fan of Back to Basics. I just think if you're not getting the basics right, and it's so important, and perhaps getting the basics right can be like a game changer, really.
Absolutely. You know, nobody's diet and lifestyle is perfect. Mine certainly isn't.
Yeah.
So we all have room for improvement.
Yeah.
And this is again where menopause can be the moment to stop, look at what you're doing and thinking, it is time to take care of myself a bit more. It's time to prioritize my needs a bit more. And that means eating better, moving more self-care, more stress management, better quality sleep, really just doing very, very simple things that when they are added together, really make a difference to that sort of lifestyle profile.
So if you are taking GLP-1 and you do stop though, is there a risk of you going back to, is it something that you have to just keep taking, or?
Well, again, really the jury's still out on this. There is evidence to suggest that a large group of people will regain some of the weight that they lost. So, and really we don't have clear evidence to say what you should do long term. So we're seeing lots of people advise on Instagram again about microdosing, and that can mean using teeny tiny doses long term or spreading those doses out long term. There isn't really a clear answer. And again, this is where, you know, having some advice about that, making sure that you really made those lifestyle changes and they're embedded by the time you get to the point where you've hit your target weight and you want to think about reducing or coming off the drug, you're only going to have any hope of doing that if you have really made those lifestyle changes. The GLP-1 is like an elastoplast over the real issue. Now, an elastoplast is blinking useful if you've cut your finger, but you know, if you're cutting your finger because the knife was continually blunt, or you were using it in a daft way, you've got to work on that as well to stop cutting it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned just quickly, you know, a lot of women are getting GLP-1 privately. So is that privately through doctor, or is it?
It's online providers.
So anyone can just sell the GLP-1.
Absolutely.
And you buy it. So you're just buying it privately. So then I guess the important thing is really, perhaps you should go to your GP first and say, I'm considering taking this off my own back privately. Is it going to be an issue with anything?
That would be wonderful.
I mean, because otherwise...
It would be great. It really doesn't happen very often. And I really wish more women would do that, because I have never spoken to a doctor yet who would say to a patient, don't be ridiculous. They would absolutely support it and make sure that you know all the implications for you with your current medical situation, whatever your medications are. You know, there are also some indicators for people who had issues with their pancreas where they may not be suitable to take it. So these are not Smarties or Sweeties. These are prescription medications.
Just a last final question. What would be words of wisdom you'd give to women if they are going through perimenopausal symptoms? They don't want to go down the HRT route yet, but they want to use food and movement. What would you advise?
I think what I would say to anyone is, first and foremost, if you feel like something is changing, don't ignore it. Find a symptom tracker. We have one. You can access that free of charge. Look at a symptom tracker and monitor your symptoms over 2 or 3 months. Get a real sense of what's going on. There's nothing to be scared of here, but there is also no badge at the end for putting up with this. You don't need to put up with it. Now get informed about what your treatment options are and whether or not you choose to use hormones, other prescribable medications, or no medications at all. See this as an opportunity to take a look at your lifestyle, understand where there are some really big wins and work on those first. If all you do is 1 or 2 things that make that lifestyle look a little better, then that's a win. You might come back to it in a couple of years and do a bit more, or you might feel inspired to go on further straight away. This is your menopause. It's your choice about how you manage it, but it is also your responsibility not to just tolerate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Nigel, thank you so much for your insights and talking about your personal journey, because I think that's quite important as well. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Shreya.